Welcome back to Change Ed.
Change Ed.
Your number one education podcast in the entire globe.
Wow.
Yeah, it expanded.
The stats keep changing.
Overnight. I'm your favorite host, Andrew Kuhn, education consultant from Montgomery County Intermediate Unit.
Titles. We're still doing
And
titles.
here with me is
Patrice Semachek, still an educational consultant, even though we said we're not doing titles anymore, with the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit.
It still feels right. Like it's like a power move, right? Like I'm an education consultant. It feels good.
Sure. Because that's what we're about. Power moves.
We are here in our studio with the OG of podcasting at Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. Brandon Langer, welcome to the show.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you for having me. It is, for those not knowing this, it is 8 a.m. on a Wednesday. Like, let's record a podcast at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday.
With
I'm like,
two
great.
people who are not morning people.
Yeah,
Andrew's like, I'll
Andrew's like,
start
here
at
we
5
go.
a.m. I'm like, please give them options. 8 is terrible. And it's gloomy outside, too. It's not even like a bright, sunny morning. It's a...
So
But I'll give Andrew credit. Like, our calendars, right? Not just mine. All of our calendars continue to be a little crazy. So happy to join. Happy to be here.
We're going to cut out the nice comments about Andrew. The
we always do.
crappy 8 o'clock.
Well, the options were 8 or 7:45. I give you options.
Well, thanks for having me. My name is Brandon Langer. I am the Director of Innovation and Strategic Partnerships here at the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit in Norristown, Pennsylvania. That's a pretty broad role. I do a lot with a variety of different programs and offices throughout this whole organization. I spent my last 4 years with Patrice and Andrew in the Office of Organizational Professional Learning, so we have a good background together. Yeah. But really focused on educational technology, really interested in, the evolution of schools and education as a whole, where we're going, where we've been. And, I also do marketing and communications for our organization, but there's a whole lot of stuff that I get to do as part of this role, and that's a lot of fun.
Super small job.
He has an awesome title. This is why we share our titles.
No, his title is amazing.
I'm an education and innovation
Can I tell a joke that doesn't get laughs? Like, that's three very corporate sounding words that sound fake, but make a real job.
They make a real job. And like a relatively, I would say, fun job. I feel like you've got a pretty fun job.
It's all over the place.
It is. That's why I said super small. Not a lot to do.
My joke's super small too. No one laughs at it, but I think it's funny, so I keep saying it.
Funny. I'm gonna
keep going back to that well that nobody laughs at, but why not?
Andrew knows that well.
Yeah.
Andrew
my favorite well.
He lives in the well.
Like, if I laugh,
he knows that well, and he lives in the well.
He lives in the well, and we all just stare at him.
With my name on the well.
I think I need to get a little sound pad that has like crickets for like when he tells a joke, and just be like crickets. Dad joke central.
Brandon, we are going to talk about a topic of your choice. We're rolling the dice. We're living on the edge at 8 o'clock in the morning. What would you like to talk about on this world-renowned podcast?
Well, I think we have to talk about AI.
I agree.
It's where the conversation is. And we wanted to have this conversation like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating that we didn't, because I'll be honest, I've learned a lot in the last 3 months, and things have continued to evolve. And
to your point, it's not stationary.
Right.
It's continually evolving. So the longer, for individuals who are like apprehensive, the longer they wait, kind of the farther the gap will be for them to need to get caught up to get into it and get in the conversation. So from your lens, what are some of the things that you're seeing happening, maybe even specifically in education? What's developing and what's coming together?
Well, I'll give you my first observation, I guess, of what's happening. Is I'm already seeing elements of what we saw in the last round of ed tech bonanza. Last time things were blowing up. What I'm referencing is more that span of 2009 to 2015, where a lot of one-to-one initiatives were coming through. And what's interesting is what I'm seeing out in this AI conversation is a very similar pattern of this is not anything new. I didn't invent this, but we had our early adopters that were all in from day one and they're super excited. And then there's that kind of trepidatious crowd that kind of mid 2023 was, okay, I could see this. And now I'm hearing conversations of people who are fascinatingly still unaware of this advancement in AI. And we've all been to presentations. We know iterations and versions of AI have been around for a long time. We're looking at generative AI when we're having this AI conversation as the next step, the next phase. Yeah. So what I'm seeing in the space is that early fragmentation of the audience. And to your point, Andrew, one of the goals I'm hoping to accomplish with, again, my small sphere of people that we have influence with, is to help get them going sooner, because it will only benefit you to have understanding and better understanding of what's going on. You don't even necessarily need to be a daily user or driver of the conversation. Having early awareness will impact the classroom, will impact your system. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. I was just at a conference and I went to a session, and the session was great. But it was a session that could have been done a year ago, maybe even a year. Like, it was very early. This is what AI is, and that room ate it up because they were there for that. They were ready for it. And I was kind of like, aren't we past this? So that gave me pause and just something to think about. How do we continue to move everyone forward together?
That's one of the things that I find really interesting about the work that the three of us are doing around AI, is that we have, like you're saying, so many different entry points that we have to be aware of. Because there are people, like you're saying, that the three of us sitting in that room would probably be like, we've heard this a million times. We've given this presentation a million times. So the fact that you're saying there are still people that are eating the entry point up is kind of a reminder, like, oh, we still have to continue to have multiple entry points along the way. Because I would have assumed at this point, considering everything that's happening and how quickly AI is transforming basically everything, that there would be most people would be further along. So that's interesting.
It makes sense. One of the early frustrations for me was me being who I am. For those that don't know, my background's in educational technology. I've done this a lot. When I saw what was coming, it's like, great, this is amazing. We can now do X, Y, and Z in the classroom. This eliminates time barriers in certain aspects of that, of what we can do in a classroom. Whereas others were having this very real and natural wanting to pump the brakes and whatever. And where I eventually ended up quantifying, again, about a year ago, this conversation for myself was, I'm not interested in having a conversation as to whether or not we should be riding horses or driving cars.
Right.
Once we had cars, we just drove cars. And not that horses aren't great. And look, if you still want to tinker in the horse world, you can go to a farm now and ride a horse around.
Right.
But in terms of getting somewhere efficiently and quickly, a car was the way to go. And I bet, to your point, Patrice, we had plenty of people back in the day that were terrified to death of cars. And like, I'm not getting in that death trap. And you know what? They were probably right, because we didn't have airbags. We didn't have seat belts. We didn't have all these things. So that's where, personally, I want to help make sure we advance that safety conversation, is what are the airbags, the seat belts, the good practices that keep people safe. I'm totally on board with that conversation. The one that I'm having a harder time with is should we really be doing this? And to me, the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, there's no going back.
There's no not having this anymore.
Well, and the kids are going to be using it. The kids are using it, regardless of what we do or don't put into. And they're finding ways to circumvent the systems that are already in place, so they can.
They're using it, but they're also using it poorly. That's the part that's frustrating.
I think we need to, as educators, it's our job to help them figure this out in a safe and supportive place, as opposed to just saying, nope, nope, nope. I don't know why I thought of Footloose. I don't really know the movie. I've never actually seen it, but I do know they said no dancing, but they still continue to dance. So that's where my brain went. Isn't that the movie where they said no dancing?
Yeah. Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
So I was like, why are we denying them dancing?
That's where you went with that.
That's where I went.
Patrice,
I don't
go watch
usually
Footloose this weekend.
Yeah. I'll tell you, one of the things that I've noticed about AI, where I can actually see how AI is actually taking hold in a different way, is in presentations. If you remember, for the original conferences we go to where they were talking about AI, whenever somebody was talking about AI, they would actually do like air typing. They would say, I would ask so-and-so, and they would air type so that we would know that you were actually talking through a computer, not having an actual conversation.
That's the mind for AI.
What? Yeah. I didn't even, I've never seen that.
It was in Footloose. If you watch Footloose, you'll see it.
Clearly no.
But now, they're more comfortable. It's the conversation, right? Like, I asked this question. But what we were talking about earlier made me think about the scenario that I saw unfold during COVID, which was, if you were primed and poised to be in a space, or you are already in a space, then you were ready to continue being in this space. And when you went virtual, you could still be present. So an example would be, at the school that I worked at, we had a news program that we aired every day, or at least once a week, usually every day. And so we already had that culture set up. So then when we went virtual, we were able to continue having a presence. We were on YouTube, and the audience was already built up, and that was a way that they could connect. there were a lot of schools that didn't have a news program, and they were trying to figure out how do we connect with each other. And they were trying to figure out how to put all these parts together kind of in a emergency situation where, like, how do we bond back together? And it was a struggle for them to start. And I'd like to make the same analogy for AI. There might become a point where it's like we all need to now be in this space. Not that there's going to be another pandemic, I'm saying that, but a scenario where we need to be there. And if you haven't already dabbled in it, you're now playing catch up and trying to fast forward it. You're going to be frustrated. It's going to be, there's a lot to take in, drinking from a fire hose, if you will, versus preparing now, taking the time in kind of a low stakes scenario to learn more about it so that we can then be leaders in the space. But to be a leader in the space, you have to be experienced and knowledgeable.
Some experience, yeah.
Let's go there, because I think that's one of my biggest learnings for me in the last 3 months that wasn't there if we had this conversation 3 months ago. Where I'm seeing this space move now, not just in education, but the broader AI landscape is absolutely fascinating and far faster. There's faster advancement than other scenarios that I've experienced in my lifetime. And two things are coming down the pike for me. Number one, we heard early with the AI conversation about prompt engineering. And again, still hearing that term in that presentation last week when there was like, oh, I got to learn how to write prompts. I'm sure we're still going to have to prompt. But what's interesting is I'm seeing us advance
way
past prompting already into, okay, it's not just a matter of asking a good prompt. Those are actually going to take care of themselves because they're already teaching it to prompt itself upon entry. So the next part of the phase of the conversation I see unfolding is a term called agents. And have either of you heard this term? No. So agents basically take your input and run it through a series of potentially different AI platforms, different AI bots that do different things very well, and they talk to each other, and then there's an output.
Oh, so I have heard of this.
You could teach an agent a process.
Yeah.
So not just, I told you to write X, you write it back to me. I told you, here's what I'm wanting to do. And it went and talked to multiple other sources through a process that has been coached and taught. And then here's your output. And the output efficacy, the quality of the output when using an agent, which is really nothing more than a solidified, proven practice, is astronomically higher than GPT 3.5, which was the first one most of us got in touch with. Astronomically higher than GPT 4. So those ones on initial ask would give you a response rate of somewhere in the ballpark of 40% of the time you got what you wanted. And again, please don't quote me on this. I'm not an expert. I'm just learning so quickly. And using an agent, we're seeing numbers hit like in the 90%. Wow. Yes, that's exactly what I wanted it to do.
Those are still bots. That's what I was hearing at South by Southwest. So I was hearing that this is the next level. And now we're going to be programming the agents to talk to each other. So the exponential process is like, we heard a lot at South by Southwest about how we usually travel in like a very linear pathway. But this is like, the trajectory is exponential. And so now that these agents are talking to each other, what's going to come out of it is going to be transformative in industry and in jobs and in terms of, and they were saying the same thing about how at this point when in education, it doesn't make sense to teach our students the prompt piece, the prompt engineering piece. It's more about we need to figure out how to, and even coding. We've been having conversations about coding is not even as important as it used to be because all of these other things are
and
happening.
Even maybe the types of coding. So I think this naturally leads to my second point. So my first thing that I've been hearing a lot about and I've been learning is agents. The second piece of this, I was watching one of the keynotes from the CEO of NVIDIA who does like graphics cards, and that's honestly powering a lot of these engines. What he's describing in terms of what their organization is building, because we think NVIDIA, we think video gaming, graphics cards, cryptocurrency. No, they want to power AI engines. He's ambitiously calling for the overturn of the entire infrastructure of the internet in the next 5 to 10 years. Okay. And what he's saying is going to happen, and I can very clearly get on board with this in terms of seeing just how fast we're moving. Everything in the internet now is historical information. It is stored. It's almost like in a locker somewhere of human knowledge that we go and we pull. Someone parked it there, and we can go retrieve it from a source, from a link, from an address, right? Well, what if the internet was constantly just generating new content, personalized content all the time, and we still have that older version? It very quickly starts to be, when you think about it, outdated, impersonal
within days.
Because it's just where we've been.
Mm-hmm.
It's not generating the now live.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's going to happen, and when people like the CEO of NVIDIA, who many hold in high regards, even against the biggest tech moguls of all time, is saying this is where we're headed, it's like, okay, we need to start listening to that, because take that and put that in a classroom. Everything we've ever handed kids in terms of content is old world at that point. It's stored, pre-produced bucket of info. All the things we ever learned, we need to learn all the standards. What if you can take a student's personalized interest profile that develops over time and automatically generates their content for the day around whatever standard they need to learn, but it's personalized to their interests and ideas live in front of them to get them to the end game faster, because they can make meaning of really high level things because it's being taught to them in a personalized way that honestly one teacher's never going to do. All that work, Patrice, you and I have talked about with PBL and all that, that needs to happen. But what if this could help take care of the content piece and I can take care of this facilitation piece? That's really exciting to me.
It is exciting, but also a little, and maybe because I'm feeling old right now, a little, if everything is tailored to their interest, how are we exposing them to new things that could be potential interests? So this is me sounding old, and you guys can call me old if you want. But I like the idea of exposing them to multiple things. So maybe there's a time and a place is what I'm hoping you're saying for like the specific interest piece, because I know for a fact, like there were things I was exposed to in school that I would not have even ventured down until someone else exposed it to me, right? Like I really loved forensics because I had a teacher who taught us all about that kind of investigation stuff in a science class that I would have never gone down that path without being exposed to it. So yes, I love the idea of personalized learning, but I worry, and again, maybe I'm old, I worry about the narrowing of the focus so much.
So that's where, because I thought you were going to say something else about your fear, but that is what, but I think they go hand in hand. And that is why people need to get on this train faster than they need to be waiting. Because when you understand the power of your educator to be a connector and facilitator of humans as opposed to a content repository and deliverer of information, that person is now free to facilitate human growth and development
on such a big shift.
Yeah. So it's
That's going to be painful for some.
Well, you're not narrowing their exposure, because that human in the room now needs to take this exposure of the Pittsburgh Steelers learning about linear equations, because it can do that, and then take this person's, interest in art, and they're learning it that way. Great. You two get together. And let's share what we've learned. And that's the facility. That's what I mean about being able to scale what we've wanted to do for a long time. But to your point, it's going to scare a lot of people because you're fundamentally rewriting the role of that person in that position.
And the other thing is I think, again, going back to, and we've seen this with all technology, right? There are going to be people that are like, yep, it does this, so I'm cool. I don't have to do anything else. Like this kid's going to go over here. I'm going to have 30 different kids doing 30 different things, and I'm teaching, right? So I think that's where we have to, in our roles, continue to have these conversations about, and we've been talking a lot about the shift of no longer is knowing, partly due to AI, the most important thing. There's thinking and there's doing that are the more important pieces that we have to shift to. I'm on board. Where did you think I was going when I said I was?
I thought you were going to talk about kind of what I just said, that, well, if you do that, then that I'm scared for my job.
Oh, yeah. And I could see that being legitimate.
I understand that, and I don't, because if you look at the current teaching landscape, we're so low on the bench that, quite frankly, there's no better time, in my view, to come into education. But that's my view of it. Because
you're a very positively focused person. That's not a downfall.
No, I know.
But you're like very much like, this is super exciting. Yeah. Where a lot of people are like, nope. I think the thing too in the conversation that we continue to have with people is maybe AI is not taking my job. My AI is taking the job that I've always had, right, and shifting it into something different. And that's very uncomfortable for some people. I can totally see both sides of the fence there.
Braden, as the OG of podcasting in Montgomery County, we want to extend to you the gift of the second to last final thought.
The second to last
Oh
final
yeah,
thought.
because Andrew refuses to not have the final thought. Yeah.
I think it's interesting, even in this short conversation, you asked where we've been, and I think that, or what, what's going on, what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
There are people coming into the fold of this conversation. There are people that have been wrestling with it for a while. There are people scared of what the outcomes are going to be. So that's a whole lot of adults
A lot of feelings.
with a lot of feelings. I think my final thought is nothing more than we have done this forever as a species, as a civilization, as we have iterated, we have developed, we have excelled. The difference right now is it's the pace feels so much faster.
fast.
So we just finished my second to final thought is this. I'm not sure that much of the generations that follow will get into a job and do the same thing for 30 years. I personally
totally agree.
And quite frankly, I don't know, this again could just be Brandon and the way I am. I could never do that. I couldn't just park and do the same thing every day. I need to create, iterate, and evolve myself. And I think we as a species need to do that. So what happens when we push past the industrialization of everything, of finance, of creation of things? Well, what we get to do is ask questions. And I think that's the most exciting thing about this technology is, what if we didn't need to know all that content? We need to understand and be constantly learning to ask better questions, because ultimately that's what powers this technology is inquisition and critical thinking.
Yeah.
That is not new in terms of people wanting to do that in education.
No.
Well, your job as a teacher just got better. Now you get to coach critical thinking and questioning, as opposed to you have to know standard 3 ... whatever. It's like you can learn that whenever. I still don't know how to change my oil. I can learn tomorrow. There's no amount of content I can't learn, even after school. But there is a window there to really develop critical thinkers. And I think if we looked at the technology that way as a way to coach and improve output through questions, that's like when we're going to finally see what can really happen with the technology in the classroom.
I have so many things, even though we said this was the second to last final thought.
And now for the 1.5 to last second thought.
No, I just I love everything you said. I love everything you said, and you're speaking to the choir in this room. And
I'm a former choir director. I'm good at that.
Nice. I have met a lot of people in this role, and I'm not sure everyone enjoys the questioning and the critical thinking and the things not being the same. And so I think that's where the rub is going to be. And I hope that collectively, those of us that are excited about the consistent iteration and change and all of the super fun things that are happening, we can help bring people along, because I just think that's going to be a struggle. Not that it's a bad thing, and I'm not trying to poo-poo, and I do love the positive attitude. I also want to meet people where they're at. I feel very strongly about that. And so I think we need to figure out, and that's hard for those of us that are creative thinkers and outside of the box, to be like, why? Just be excited. It's cool, it's fun, and do this. So I think that we need to continue to bring people in and have people kind of explain it, or for me, now I know, my new marching orders for myself are going to be, I need to understand the other side so I can help bring people along, because the cat is out of the bag. We're not going back.
So I think the next conversation we have about this topic is about engagement, because anyone that speaks comes back to me and says, I'm scared, I'm hesitant, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, all I hear is that kids are unengaged and they're on their phones all day. So what are we doing to be better than that? And show them how amazing learning is. Let's go
because
back
they are
to
learning. That's the crazy thing.
Yes.
The kids that are on their devices
and
are learning.
some of them are learning stupid stuff.
The stuff my kids tell me, my son, this is going to sound really crazy. Micah, my youngest, is obsessed with geography and flags. He didn't get that from school, but you could show him literally any flag in the world and he could tell you where it's from. He could tell you where it's from and where it is on the map. He watches He goes down YouTube holes of just, here's a little ball with a flag on it. And he'll be like, that's Uganda. That's Africa. They're from Africa. Like the most crazy stuff that he has. So they are constantly learning. That's the thing
That's what
about
I'm
what's
saying,
going
though.
on with these kids is they're constantly learning.
So what if we could be doing that and accomplishing our goal at the same time?
Right.
That I think proves
agree.
my point is
I agree. Yeah.
that is becoming possible.
Yeah. And
And
it
that
doesn't
is my
have to be just skibbity toilet.
Second
right?
to last thought. Yeah, exactly.
If I hear skibbity one more time, I'm going to lose it.
Well, that AI is a learning partner that we need to come at it with the right lens, that this is a partner for us and a life partner. It's not a tool that we use during 9 to 3. It's something that's available to them all the time. But while we have them in front of us, while we're with them, what does that look like? For a long time, we've talked about integration in education and the power of integrating. AI takes that to a whole new level. Integration looks very different, and it's almost the exclamation mark at the end of the word integration of like, this is how we can do it in all things and in all ways. And what I really appreciate about what you were saying, besides absolutely everything, obviously, Brandon, but one thing that really stuck out to me was you were talking about asking better questions, and we've been looking into a lot is curiosity. And that just is built, like, how do we build the power of curiosity in education and as learners? And how can we put that back in? How can we give that back to them? And they are curious anyways. The conversation we had, they're curious anyway. Somehow, unintentionally, we've almost taken that out, or taken it away from them. Let's give it back.
We've been talking about that forever. I mean, I vividly remember, and I've used it a million times. Ken Robinson has this video he's done a million times where he brings up a study that was done, feels like forever ago, where in kindergarten they're asking hundreds of questions a day, but by the time they reach high school, they're asking one question a month. So there's something that we've done. We've schooled them out of their curiosity by pushing the knowing so much.
Well, you used the word. We've gone to school. And the best thing that Ken Robinson separated out for me, well, there's actually 2 different ones, but I'll focus on this one.
I love him so much.
He is my favorite. Yeah. And if you haven't read we're Out of Our Minds or something like Out of Our Minds, it's just the name of the book. Go read that this summer. It is 1,000% worth your time. I've read it like 8 times.
I'm going
but
to Amazon now.
I don't even think this is from that book, but he delineated for me for the first time, this is the first person I heard separate school from education, from learning. They are not the same thing. Totally. And I think that maybe is another road for us to go down, and I'll leave it at that. But you just said we've schooled them out of questions, and yes, we have. Yeah. Because learning is guided by questions, and school is guided by output, which is industrialized and based on yield. And we don't need to do that anymore. No. Not as much as, certainly not as much as we've been doing for 100 years.
Okay. Final thought.
All right. So our 35th final thought, closing out this podcast.
Clearly what we've learned before you get there is that we need Brandon back multiple times, and this is going to be a series. And that I should start with the close of the podcast at the beginning. No. So that we can get to the end in about 25, 30 minutes. Yeah. Sorry. Brandon, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate having you. Thanks for having me. You're a wealth of information, and AI is a hot topic, but you're talking about it in a very informed manner and also insightful, looking to the future. I think it's the most exciting thing about AI is what it could be. We always talk about, that we can be anything we want to be, and really this is a partner that could be for each individual. It's almost like their personal assistant that can go along with them. The agent part really stuck with me a lot, how you were talking about the AI agent. Mm-hmm. And so the final thought is that is what we are as educators. We are agents for learning for students, and that we can partner with AI and help them learn, how does this agent work? How's an agent supposed to work for you to really empower you for future learning? So we encourage you to be an agent for learning. And on behalf of the entire Change Ed team, thank you for tuning in and listening. We encourage you to follow, like, and share. Can you like on podcasts? Do you do that? Is that a thing, you can
OG?
on the social media.
Post it on social media. They can like it.
Okay.
Thank you, Brandon.